out of bounds. So I'm just going to give a little bit of positioning so you understand where the agents fit in the spectrum of tools that we've got. And then I'm actually going to go through and just show you an example of taking us from what you get with raw tooling through to how you can advance and configure it yourself from us as business users, as opposed to having to directly engage into development or without development. So I'm going to show you where the line is, and then I'm going to take you through how to use that. I took a bit of feedback on the last one. I tried to cram too much stuff in. I've peeled it back. Let's hope I've not peeled it back too far and there's enough to get to the end of the session, but I'm happy to take questions at the end, unless it's something that you're really burning to ask, in which case, please either nobble one of the guys over there, pop it on the chat, or just put your hand up if you're in the room. Please forgive me if I don't get to it straight away. I will try and answer everything as we go. Okay. So that's a little bit of my background. I'm not going to talk you through. We've already covered off what we were doing for the session itself, so it's going to go through the basics around the agent, but get you quite quickly to the more powerful areas in terms of what we do. I'm making a gross assumption here that everybody is at least familiar with the term agent, and if you've not already got some kind of pilot or starting a pilot or actively starting to use these, then it's so imminent that you're here to find out what you need to put into it. I'm happy to be dissuaded from that, but everywhere I've been to in the last 6 months is pretty much in that situation. Okay, so for what I see is that most people are on this kind of journey going from where we traditionally, and that is a picture of me at the weekends on the left-hand side, to where we think we're going in terms of that view of trying to drive a degree of automation, and it's being exaggerated in the news and on the various social media channels and through work channels, etc. But what we're actually finding is that we don't really know the extent that we can leverage that in a business context, and we're only just working our way through. The problem is it's moving so fast, and that the guidance and standards around this are forming as we go, that it's going to be really easy for some of us to fall flat on our faces, particularly with agents. Okay, so my aim here is to kind of just jump us over a little bit of that, and at least try and get you past the first few hurdles. Now, in terms of the when I'm talking about agents and AI agents in particular, Microsoft's branded a whole suite of stuff together under a term Copilot. And now they've started to row that back off things that they've gone, well, perhaps that wasn't Copilot, that's not AI. Agents kind of fit in there. And if you've paid for a Copilot license, or if you're looking at the new E-Plan framework that's just come through, so Microsoft's just introduced an E7 framework, which includes the AI tools. If you're looking at something like that, then agents are a big part of what that does, because agents are a predictable way of dealing with the activity and embedding AI. So when we look at where it fits, and I did say I'll just give you a little bit of background because I'm getting a few questions. I've put templates on the scale, and I've put templates on the scale because they've been around forever and a day. They're still very manual, and I'm seeing people trying to take declarative agents, which is the stuff I'm going to show you, to do what templates do. And it's not the same thing. So just beyond that, though, declarative agents are seen as this kind of low entry, easy to do, particularly with the way Microsoft's deployed those, so that you can actually just click and go in effect in your content in SharePoint and in Teams. But really what we want to get to, and where we think we're getting to, and where most people's vision is in their business for using these things, are the latter two, where we start to introduce an agent and put some guidelines around it to make it robust and repeatable in our context, not just generic. And more importantly, trying to get us to where we can automate things that we feel are drudge work. And I say that cautiously because quite a lot of the stuff that you see in the media is all around it's taking away the high value creative bits that we like doing as part of our job, and leaving us to do the low value QA. So why are we using the agent to do something that we're good at and not the other way around? And it's because we're still early in that cycle. We haven't established all those patterns and frameworks yet. But the idea is that we're moving along that, and eventually we'll end up at the equivalent of where we envisaged things would be about 15 years ago with workflows and apps and enablement on the back of that. So what they've done is they've filled in the spectrum, and what you get with Copilot and SharePoint agents in the environment is really declarative agents, and those that we can start to enable and streamline with what we call skills and designs. Skills and designs are ways to break out and give repeatability to an action, but the agent is the bit you talk to. Okay. So this end, forms, templates, been around forever. People tend to ignore them. They don't get the right one. They take copies, they get out of date, and our issue is all of those things. And agents is seen as a way of me talking to it and saying, I want one of these things, and Christian jumping on and going, I mean something completely different. And the agent does the interpretation between both of us saying, really what you wanted was the same thing. Just because I say it, because I'm a little bit older than Christian, I would say it one way and he would say it another, and it gets even more interesting the further away from the last century you get. So what I'm going to do here is just to kind of put these in some context for you and just show you the range of what's there. Now, what I've done is we're focusing on user-led, and that's where my demos are going to be. We're going to sit at this end. This is the stuff that is being touted that we can do as information and business users and people on the front line. We don't have to be a developer to be sat in this space. That's the illusion that's being sold. And it is a bit of an illusion because a lot of that's changing as we go. And really what we're seeing is that we've got an ability to articulate vague ideas to achieve. The agent can help us interpret that and turn it into something that other people can see and becomes consistent in what it does. And as we move towards the tooling and we end up in the middle, there's a bit in the middle of Microsoft's called Copilot Studio Lite, which is actually covered under the same licensing that you've probably got down this end on the left-hand side. But you are really straddling that gap between now I need a real person that understands software development and release processing and testing, because I'm wandering into developing an AI app, not just putting an agent to interpret how I speak. And I'm using a big differentiation there because things we want to do in the middle, you get to quite quickly as a business. So when I go through the example, you'll see how very quickly we end up at Copilot Studio area. But that means that you need to be aware of how to articulate your requirement properly and how to define the boundaries of what you want and what you don't want. Because saying what we don't want the agent to do is as important as saying what we want it to do. Because one of the worst things you can do with it is, apart from your content, which I'll come to, and your access, which I'll come to, is being vague in how you articulate what you're after. And then you'll complain because it doesn't understand it. Yeah, I'm a little bit older. My kids have gone. But I've got a vague recollection that I used to ask them to do stuff and then I complained when they didn't do it and they told me I didn't tell them how. It's a bit like that. So the first side of it, that left-hand side, that user side, we see that as being a low build effort. And by that, I mean, any one of us here should be able to sit down and go, I want to do this thing. I need to understand what the process is behind generating my request for leave. I need to develop a new policy around the privacy impact when I open up my organization to the use of agents. Any of those sorts of things, you can go, well, that's what I want to do. It will help you go, right, well, I can find all this relevant information, pull it together, and this is how you check. So it does the legwork, doing the research, the discovery, piecing it together. That's what there. And that works really well if your foundations around the environment are pretty good. And it's really easy, but there's a couple of risks related with that, which is if you've got poor quality content, so you've got lots and lots of old stuff, versions, stuff that's out of date, drafts, copies that are just kept as reference, and things that are open that shouldn't be open, that should have been got rid of. If you've got poor quality content that it's looking at, it will get all of that. And the things that you go to most frequently, it will think are the most valuable, because it doesn't understand the fact that we could put it in a folder that said superseded. And just because you go back to it to reference it, doesn't mean to say it's not valuable. Because it goes, oh, you've been to that one 15 times versus the one over there that says it's the authoritative one twice. Right, okay, the one that you went to 15 times is more valuable. I'm going to use that one. So your quality of your content is really important. The weaker that you wrap around the guidance for it and say, only use this, or don't use that stuff over there, the guardrails, when to use it, when not to use it, how to use it, what kind of language you come back with, how you interact with me, how you qualify what I'm saying to you, all of those sorts of things that we as humans learn as you are growing up. And agents got there really quickly, but it has no context or understanding. So we have to tell it that. We have to put the guardrails in. Otherwise, it's like talking to a teenager while their brain's going through that chemical soup, and everything that was useful when they were little is gone, and they haven't established what will be useful when they're out in the real world afterwards. We're in that sort of space with an agent. Understanding what it can and can't do is also equally important. An agent is not replacing your use of a template for something where you just go in and type in the same 15 words and paste in text. It could trigger that for you, but it is not designed to do that. That's what templates and workflow do. But an agent can sit on the front of those and handle those for you. So it's just really important to understand that. And on the flip side of that, you've got the foundation work that needs to go into it. So the things I've already talked to. And ironically, this is the stuff we've been banging on about for years that nobody ever wanted to listen to. And we went, we need to do this. And everyone went, yeah. No, that's boring. Don't like that. So we can put an agent over that and magic will happen. I'm sorry, but it doesn't unless you tell it what you want it to do in the right way. Should it have access to that information? I'll give you a really good example. I'm working with a council. We've been talking about the information that they've got. They collect multiple sets of reporting on a regular basis that goes externally. The people that do the generation of the report that comes in, that gets turned into a nice newsletter that goes out to executives and externals and other parties, have got a broad range of access. An agent that they would use to generate that report can see a lot more than it potentially needs to, because they've got access to lots of other places, not just the reporting coming in from the people that tell them what needs to go into it. It doesn't know that's the context when they use a raw or a basic agent, or it's got basic configuration. So it would go when you say, tell me what's happened in the last month from all the things that I've received or that have gone into X, Y, and Z. It goes, well, you've got all this draft stuff, I'll put all that in as well. Without the human that's somewhere in the middle of that, you've got no idea if that should be going out or not. So the quality of what you've got, the information you've got, permissions in your architecture, funnily enough, really important to get good results out. Now you can use the agents to help you clean that up, define what it could be and how useful that would be, and put that in place. And I do that. That's part of my job working with others. And agents allow me to do that because I've grounded agents in the way that I work with the background and knowledge that I've got and the guidelines that I know will work. And they can generate me information architecture that should go in. Does that sign it off? No, business needs to do that. So I still need to do interaction with people. So those things really, really make this work. And lots of people hate me for that because it just sounds like I'm being an old fuddy-duddy. But what I want to do is to avoid that. Phrased as an example from the 19th century, well, from the 20th century, post First World War, there was this concept of hyperinflation in some of the countries where your money in a wheelbarrow wouldn't even buy you a loaf of bread because it was valueless. There was so much of it, it was printed, it had no value. What they had to do was to reduce it. So they had a massive slash and burn on getting rid of that currency, the volumes that were out in the market, and reduce it down to just the ones that were valued. Think about the information you've got in your file shares on desktops, in other services that might be in historic EDRMs you need to import. And go, how much of that is actually got the flag it's valuable on it versus it's old? That's one of the big things that we want to avoid. And actually, agents are in a pretty good space with the way that Microsoft's done that, because they're actually already grounded in the way that they're deployed to a lower set of information. So we've already removed some of that. But if you're not dealing with it, you're drowning in the content. And that skews the bias of your information. Everybody bangs on about bias. Most of the examples are really big examples around things like ethnicity and language, or if you go and look at health based on, health profiles that are based on male, white, Western rather than female or multicultural, all of these things are bias. In your old content, in your file shares, is a bias based on your historical activity and what you used. And if you import all of that and don't tell the agent that's old stuff, ignore it for generating new stuff, unless I'm doing research in that bit. If you don't tell it that, it's going to think that's as valuable as stuff that's been created this year in a new context, in this relevance. So bringing in all your old rubbish is not going to help you. The concept of mining your old information is a great one, but you've got to do it carefully. You can't just dump it in your environment. And the reason why I put these on is that I've got organizations going, well, where do we get the most out of this? How can we do this quickly? They go, well, actually, what we want to do is make use of what it does. AI can do what you do quicker or repeatably and accelerate what you do. So we want to take away those things and get you there quicker. And that's what the agent does. If we give it the guardrails and if we give it the right grounding and we've got the right kind of permissions in place. Guardrails and grounding, things that we can do quite quickly, hence we can get there quickly. And that's exactly what I'm going to show you in the demo. So I've got a nice little example in here that basically compares the agents to a teenager and what the implications are, but I'm not going to go into that. So I'm going to just jump forward and we'll go into this. I'm going to go through what it does. When do you use the out-of-the-box configuration? An agent that's just deployed. Every single site that you've got, whether it's native SharePoint only, or it's one that's Microsoft Teams workspace, or even your OneDrives, if you've turned on one license of a Copilot, Microsoft 365 Copilot, or you've enabled the pay-as-you-go option for this, then you get two things. Reporting that's hidden away in the SharePoint environment and controls that go to the agent. And the other one is every single site has the ability to then have an agent enabled on it by default. And if you have the license to see it, it's already there and it's hooked into your indexing and all your content. So it's already grounded on whatever rubbish you've got in that site. So we've got that. But what we've got after that is we've got the ability for you as individuals to then go, well, if I can do that and I can edit my site, I can do my own. And I can put some guardrails around it and I can say, only use the good stuff. I do work over here. Please answer me in something that other than American English. You've got the ability to do that, and that's what we'll go through. Then from there you go, right, I need something more than just this side. If I'm looking at more than one side, if I'm looking at different types of information, different areas, if I want to start to say it should be able to automatically create me documents on the back of this, then we're into what's called the agent builder, which you can still do if you've got a license. You don't need a lot of skill to be there, but you are starting to need to be aware to be there. And at this point, we're into a space where you should be going and getting somebody who understands development to do that. And at this point is where you're going, well, I need to reference information outside of SharePoint or OneDrive. I might need to pull information coming out of ServiceNow. I might want to go and look at things on external websites. I might need to reference Salesforce. We've got information there. This is the point where you flip over to development. And then there's two other levels after that, which I'm not going to go through. We're just going to focus on the others. So I'm just going to switch over now to the sharing, and we'll go through those examples. Right, let's meeting. Okay, it's dropped off my screen. Okay. Right, so everybody should be able to see an area. This is an active area. It's got old content, it's got new content, it's got real content. It's not demo. I am demoing you a real. And what we're doing is I'm just going through reference material that's been collected over a long time. And yeah, we'll do that in a moment. And I just want to start showing you here that as soon as you've got a license, if it's assigned to you and you can edit anything in a site, then usually a couple of seconds after everything else is loaded in your SharePoint environment, you'll see that pop up. And that is the button to go. You can open an agent, and every single site by default already has pre-canned agent. That's what we see here. Now, the thing with the pre-canned agent, it works a bit like the Copilot chat. Have you all used the Copilot chat, which is kind of like the search interface? Everybody in the room is nodding, so that's good. The whole point with this agent is it's a bit like having that just grounded or focused on this site and only this site. So if I've got folders in here that are permissioned for me that go superseded, the agent's working on my behalf as me with my permission, so it thinks that's as useful as everything else if I'm not told it it's not useful. So first thing to think about is how much junk have you left exposed that you perhaps shouldn't have in an authoritative area. So for this, I can go onto the site and I could go, well, I could select everything and I can just use the agent that comes up and I can go, tell me, summarize what's going on. If I do that for all the stuff in here, of which there are several hundred items, it's going to be some time. So what I had previously was I just put together a couple old ones and I went, well, I could go summarize those. And what it does is these little buttons, these little kind of example prompts it gives you, these are the sorts of things that we would want to create when we do our own. But these give somebody a useful starting point. And one of the most useful you can do on every agent you ever go to is ask it, what can it do? Because it will tell you what it can do and how it can be useful to you. And it's probably far more than you ever think it will be. So from here, if I choose that, you can see here it's gone the, give me the too long didn't read contents for the files and summarize that. And then that will go away and it will chunk through in the background and it will come back with a précis and a summary. Now I'm going to kick that one off and leave it here. Now, when I look at it, it feels a bit slower than if you're jumping onto something like Gemini on the Google content, or if you're jumping onto one of the external services and you've loaded your content. And that's because it's doing something that the others aren't. So it's going through all of your security and your access. It's looking at your content. It's looking at the context in the site and the environment. And then it's working its way through any guidelines that have been given to it in the background. So it feels a bit slower. And arguably it is when you hold a stopwatch next to it, but it's doing a lot more on your behalf for them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave that one there because I'm also on a very narrow band connection, so it might not last as long as I'd like it to. But the idea is that you can ask it and interact with it, and it will come back with a very basic set of terms. And is it just going to sit there? Benefits of live demo. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next one anyway. So one of the things that you can do from here is once you start getting the information back, I'll come back to an example and show you the information as it pulls it through, is that you've got the option to be able to interact with it and go back through previous questions that you've raised. That's a bit like dealing with the Copilot chat. You can see all your history. But we've got no other options other than if I stop it, I can say, give me a new chat. I've got no editing options. I've got no ability to give it guidelines. it's just going to trawl through whatever's there. Whereas if I looking at the same area and I go to the agent loader, I've then got other things that I can do. So I can go and say, well, yes, I've got my default one, but I can create an agent that does something more. And you can see on here, I've got a number that I've created over time that are visible to me based on what I've done. So some on here are published to everybody. Some on here are personal only for me, and they apply to different sites and different areas I work on. But from here, what we can do is we go, well, I want to do a new agent. And then we get into, this is the basics. So this is going beyond the tool, whatever it does, it's going to give me something. Is it useful? Maybe. This is where we start getting into, I can tell it what to look at. I can tell it how it should talk to me and how I want it to perform. And to do that, we give it a name. And I can give it a description of what it's going to be. And this is what other people will see when they hover over that agent. It tells them what it's about to do. I'm not going to change that for here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, now I'm going to narrow it down as to what it looks at. So this is helping us reduce the volume of crap that it goes, excuse my language, the volume of stuff that you may have brought over accidentally. And we can go from here, I can look at everything in my location. In this case, it's the site. Or I can say, only look at my authoritative library in this case. Or I can say, only look at these documents. If I want to add anything else from there, I can choose to remove it, or we can just choose and say, I want to add specific contents. And then I can go through, and it's just like picking anything else. So it's a really simple process from the end user point of view. I can go in and either select the whole thing, or I could just go, right, only pick me those 4 items to use. And it will just itemize them. And you get a limited amount of specific documents or lists you can use. Nice to be able to say lists again, because up until about a month and a half ago, it did not respect information held in a list. And most of us in they've been using SharePoint for any length of time, have registers in there, so risks, issues, decisions, event management, counts, all sorts of stuff in lists. And it just went, nah, I'm not dealing with that. Up until about 6 weeks ago, but now it does. So we can put specific documents in, or I can go everything in a particular location, and I can get quite granular. And what that's doing is it's going, well, I'm taking those as being preferred sources of information to answer your question. And then I'll default to what's above it. So what else is there around me I could use? So it's not excluding the other things completely, but it is narrowing what you use. And it's working in your context, so using your permissions when it operates, unless we do something more sophisticated later on. So we can add the individual items. And then here's the really interesting bit. This is the bit everybody wants to know about. What do I put in the instructions? This is the declarative bit. This is where we tell it how to converse and what to do and how it should work. And this is where you get to see everything from people going, help me with this thing, a one-liner, through to somebody goes, I've written a prompt and it's 3 pages long. Oh my goodness. So you kind of go, well, what have you done? Couple of things. Agents are designed to be focused. If you overload them with actions, they will be a bit like one of your colleagues where you overload them with tasks. They'll go, which one do I do first? Which order do I? I'm not so sure. I'll do the easiest one first. I'll find it, and I might drop one, and I know this one. So if you overload it, you don't get the quality you want. That's where we can bring in what we call a skill. And a skill is just basically another little agent that does a particular thing in a particular way. And it goes, I'll outsource that job and bring it back when I need it. So it works as the coordinator understanding what you mean. But if you give it too much information, it's a bit like me talking to you now, too much information. You're all going. When we break it down, small bits, it works better. So on here, what we've got is that it needs to have that description put in a bit more detail. And here's a bit of information I created earlier. So I'm going to give it a bit of a description. Now, in this case, I've basically said, you're going to work in this information. I want you to operate in this way. And that's not too sophisticated. I got this information by originally starting off with asking the basic agent with no controls. When I was in my library, what would be good for using this library? And it came up and told me everything else I'm going to show you. So you can ask it to do its own homework, as well as check yours. So we can work in that context. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take that description and I'm just going to put it in here. And then we've got a few things, and this is where we get into the basics of instructions. This is the declaration. These are the how it should work and how it should operate. And there are some things that you always need to talk to. You always need to give it some kind of scope. Always. It doesn't matter what you do. We should always tell it how it should work. Give it some behavioral guidelines. And then we should give it some guardrails, which should be, first, always think of do something in a particular way I'd like it. And then you follow up with don'ts. AI is not great with don't. It works okay, but it's very good with do. If you do use a do with an adjective with an extra clause for the don't afterwards, you tend to get a better result. So don't tend to think of it as a list of no, because that's a bit like dealing with your teenager. No, oh yeah, I'll go off and do something else. You need to go, you do it this way, but without going and breaking an arm. Yeah. So it's those sorts of things that it does. And we give it a few basics of how it will interact with everybody else. And for that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that greeting message and we're going to put that front. Got that wrong way around. Let me just grab that one. Greeting message goes there. Big description goes on the front. Sorry, grab the wrong one in the wrong order. Fortunately, this will be on video and you can rewind it and go and just switch that bit around. But what we will do is we'll just grab those and we'll say what it's acting doing, what is it role, why is it there? I've not been very broad. I've said it's doing this one thing. And the examples that I've been working on and where people have been using them, we've gone, it's doing this one activity. It's a contact center support advisor. So it's answering stuff based on the knowledge base and the procedures you've got. And it shouldn't go outside of that. And we tell it not to go outside of that. Or it's a policy advisor and it's helping you generate and clarify and review the terminology based on guidelines it's got on language and tone and existing policy framework. So we're giving it a little bit broader than do one thing, but we're giving it a scoped job that's relatable. So what we do is we're going to grab that lot. And this is all, by the way, all of this text, all of the example is actually in the back of the slides, which you'll get anyway. So if you want to grab these and just tweak them, the highlighted yellow parts are the bits that you just pull out and go there. Or just use the original, tell me what would be a good agent definition, and it will tell you on the context of your library. So I'm going to use that. We're going to give it the instructions down at the bottom. Now, the UI itself isn't brilliant. We can't stretch that wide. We can only go down. But it's only designed to give you kind of a quick get ready and go. And then what I've got here are a couple of starter prompts. And I didn't even come up with starter prompts. The agent, when I asked it to give me a good idea of what kind of agent I could use on the library, came up with the starter prompts for me. And I went, that one's all right. That one's all right. Now I'll change that word. So you don't need to kind of go, oh, what would be a great question? What do I commonly get? Ask it to generate some, and you go back and you revise it and you review it based on feedback. Because you just go back into edit the wizard and you're in the same thing again. You can just overwrite it when you need to. So I'm just going to grab that one. And I'm going to leave that one on there because how you can help me is probably one of the most useful options you get. So from there, you can see as I've been going through, it's been configuring this on the side. So I've not even created this yet, and I can test it. Now you'll see it pops up with Copilot, and then when you're actually in the library, once you've deployed it, it will say SharePoint. Just ignore it. It's basically telling you it's doing stuff. It's a bit like having the dots go around in a circle on the screen. But it will go away and do its thing, and I think it's just running a bit slow today. Let's see if it came back on the other one. No, it didn't. All right. So what I am going to do then is I'm just going to refresh this page from scratch. And I'm going to use that one I said I used at the top. So what is a good description for an agent and what can you do? So that's my description there. And I'm going to kick that in and see if it will actually not time out. But one of the challenges with doing any of these things, Microsoft's making some quite big changes to the services right now with this month. And unfortunately, that does mean that sometimes these things time out and you have to go back and rerun it or redo it. That can get a bit frustrating. It's not very good on a demo. It doesn't give you a great example to look at. There you go. Telling you it's busy behind the scenes, so it's great. It's a bit like going to your colleague going, can you help? And they go, no, I'm busy right now. It's not helpful. But what you can do, and here's something that a lot of people forget, is they get frustrated with it. You can just say, just ask it to redo it. And it'll, in theory, should go off and redo that. You can do that in the middle of Copilot while you're talking to, while you're having a conversation, by the way. If it comes back without all of the answer you were expecting or missing things, you go, are you sure? Can you just redo it? And it will invariably go away and bring back more information. So on here, we can see that this one's now had time to go away in the test. And it came back and went, well, I can help you answering that based on the collateral that's available. I can explain what it does. It gives me the information, it's giving me a heading, giving me some outlines based on the documents that I highlighted. It's even giving me the links back to the documents it was using. What I'm not going to do is I'm not going to do this. So because I put in here the guardrails, don't make stuff up. Don't gaslight me. Don't tell me that, oh, isn't that awesome and things like that. Because the guardrails say, don't make stuff up. I only refer to what you've got. Tell me what you can't do. Give me examples of what you can. Those guardrails take a basic answer, which would go, hey, that's a great question. That's an awesome answer. Oh, you framed that really well. I don't want that. I want you to just interact with me normally. You tell it not, and it goes away, does it? So the guardrails are actually really, really useful. And things like, don't answer outside of your scope. Don't speculate or infer. Always go back to the authoritative, and then reinforce that with go back to the authoritative stuff. Go back to the escalate if you don't know. Those are the things that make that start to work repeatably and more reliably. So once we've done that, we just go create. And what it's doing is behind the scenes, it's taking all of those, it's generating a file, and it's shoving it into your site. Now, after that, we can go through and we can publish it to make sure that everybody can see it, not just you or not just the people that can edit. And we can then make it a default. So we could change what the out of the box one does by making this a default. So we can go with that. If we just want to look at that, it's telling us exactly where it's actually put it. I can then go through and save it and change the location. This really annoys me because it gives me that I'm going to save it to my OneDrive versus I'm actually saving it to my site. So there's a little bit where Microsoft's not quite got the UI right there. But you can actually just go straight to the location for that. It tells you the definition that you're using is saved in this library. I'm just going to chat with it. And what it does is it will then go off and say, right, well, that's what I'm going to load up. And it will give you the option to talk to that in the chat. So we've created an agent on the SharePoint library. But actually, I can use that just from the Copilot chat. So I can just go talk to it and say, well, can you tell me about that? And this way, it will go away and start looking at things, but it's only grounded in that one space. That's the reason why my agents, of course, things like content creator, proposal agent, reviewer, what are we doing on here? There's a couple of other solution design advisor. So I keep them down to the job and the activity and the type of role. I don't call them things like Susan. It's a real example. But yeah, there's those sorts of things that go on in the background. So we can deal with it there, or we can just go back to the library and go, well, actually, my agent's here. And I can just switch to it. So if you've got more than one, you can switch to it. Now, the main thing and the difference here is that I can, apart from send it to be available in Teams or share this with other people, I can re-edit the agent. So I can go back in and I can change those guidelines, the guardrails. I can also, once this has been done, go in and say, well, I can make this the default on the site. So I can go, if I'm the right level of permissions, I can click and say, it's now the one that everybody gets when they click on this at the top. We'll leave that to track in the background, because the next thing from here is actually just stepping over from the agent that we were showing here a moment ago. Let me just go back a page. Right. So this was when I went to chat with it, I went to the Copilot chat interface. Well, you notice on Copilot chat and under agents, we've got this option for a new agent here. So I'm not in a location. I'm somewhere else. And I want to do something more than just say in my library, in my site. So this is where you're actually going from having an agent that's just working for one context in one place and going, actually, I want you to work across all these projects. I want you to provide advice and guidance that supports financial services, not just supplier management. And we can start to look at those. And what we have is this option to go through what's called Agent Builder. So that's going from the basic, which has got no guardrails, to us adding some basic guardrails in the same area. From here, we're jumping onto, you tell me what you want to do, and I'll walk you through a more complex wizard that allows you to do a lot more control. This is where we get to, I want to generate documents. I want to span different areas, multiple sites, multiple sets of data. And on here, I can go, well, there we go. I'm giving it the same description I gave the other one. I'm going, well, you can do that. And I've got the ability to be able to just click go and it will start to fill things out for me. Or I can go and look at the configuration. I'm just going to use do the job for me. Being really slow. There we go. Excellent. So it's gone through the same kind of chat that we did when we were looking at just on the side in the library. And it's gone, okay, well, I can have a look at that. But now instead of me filling it in the wizard and having to think about it, it's going through the interpretation and doing it for me. But what it's gone here is it's gone, well, okay, I can do that. But if you can tell me which information I'm using, and you can add the conversation starters, or I can ask it to, then I can get on and do that for you. So what I can do from there is I can go, well, actually, what I want you to do is just use why is it? Oh no, it's got the right place. That's fine. So And on the right-hand side, this is it laying those things out. So after I've asked the agent to do something around building it, it will then go back and it's going to update what's going on the right-hand side. So I'll leave it to do that and just go through. So this is like a slightly broader view of what it was showing before. So we've got the same description like we had on the little wizard that came up. We've got our instructions, but here now we've got a slightly better view of the world, and we can have a look at what we've got here. Now, because I asked it to do something else, it's got changes, so it will show me what's been updated. So I can start to have a look through all those instructions that it's come up with. So I didn't give it those. I didn't paste them in. I asked it to create me an agent based on that information that's come up with those on its own. But I can give it some guidance to say, well, actually, I want all agents to always speak to me in New Zealand English, please. Well, actually, you get Aussie and UK, those are the closest to the moment. So you can go, I want it to speak not American. And it will come back to those things. But it will go, well, how should I finish a conversation? What sort of things should I interact with? What shall I do around feedback? So it's giving you the idea of the sorts of segments you get in. It's populated that. I didn't have to go and find them. And here, this is where this gets more powerful, is that I can go, rather than just, it's this library, it's these documents, it's my site. I can go, these sites, those conversations or teams, these websites, this external service. But I can start to say, add more things in. I can put on there external site or project sites that I deal with internally, conversations, meetings that I've been involved in, other things that I'm dealing with on the back. I can paste in websites on there, so I could go and put in. Actually, I did have one on my notebook. I did have one in my notebook, and it appears to have gone. So just as an example. So I can put in an external reference. That's the information that it's going to. And I can say, I can see what that is. I can go to that link, but I can't say one is preferred over the other. To do that, to say this is the best one, anything else is supplemental, I need to go up a level in tooling. That's when we start to transition to the Copilot Studio. And that's really when we as ordinary people need to go and find somebody that's got a techie hat on that used to dealing with development. I mean, I did that a long time ago, but even I don't want to go there because it just gets a lot more involved. But from here, I can go and put all the different sorts of things in. I can put more than the limited amount of content that I could through the wizard on the library. That allows me to add 20 items, and then it's done. And it limits them by the location. This allows me to put a lot more in terms of information on. But I got on here, I can then specify what it can do. I can say, you can do analysis, you can interact with my documents, I can have you create things. We'd have none of this flexibility with the other two options in the library. So if we want to move it from beyond interacting with me and just telling me bits of information about the documents or about how I should respond to something or the procedures, and I wanted to start creating an example, so policy advisor, I want to create a new policy based on the old one. It's got to take into account the general AI guidelines from the central government. It's got to go and build in the government IT directives around the security needs that we've got to put in. I need to reference. So if I start adding in things like that, then actually I need to go beyond, because I'm now pulling in sources from other places. And it's got handy little things here. Rather than me typing in stuff, I can go, well, I could just add those messages. And these are essentially, these are the prompts that, how do I do this thing? What can you do? Can you create me a policy? Can you do this? As soon as you start going, create me one, or generate something, or provide me detailed analysis, which is new, not just taking the data you've got and reformatting it, then we are moving into a lot more powerful in terms of that interaction. Now from here, we can just flip through and we can just try that. So in the same way we did before, we can just interact with it and I can While it goes away and does that, you'll notice that on the left-hand side, it's got a couple of other options. These always come up once you've done the basics for a description of what you want to try. Includes things like, can you add the conversation starters? So can it come up with the basic questions for me? So you don't have to do that thinking, you just adjust them. And the same with the options here around, can you finalize it and create it so we can push it out to the right place? This is what you do if you want to create one that other people are going to use. It's not a personal one for you. And on here on the right hand side, you'll notice that while I was talking, it came back and went, yeah, here's some of my limitations. And you notice a number of those we don't refer to. That's because they're built into the base model that we're consuming from Microsoft in terms of what it does and how it works. Yeah, great, but that's not necessarily everything I want. What I want to do here is to actually include some additional information. So if I go to the bottom, I go, well, actually, what I really want, sorry, excuse me, I'll just go back a little bit. I'm going to put it in before the error handling at the bottom. I'm just going to go, well, really what I want is to also have my tone. I want my language. I want the style of output to be professional. I want you to work in this manner. I want you to not just give me 3 bullet points with 6 words on each one. I want you to give me exposition. I need you to give me detail. I want you to work in our context. So what we have here, and this is included in the back of the slides and everything we get, by the way, in terms of the basics for that. This is a subset of what typically people are looking at when they go work in our style and tone. And we've got language guidelines and we've got rules that you should operate within. And we want the agent to do that, not come up with random things that we're not supposed to do. We want you to operate like we're supposed to. So we can grab those, and you notice I've gone, please get rid of things like emojis or decorative symbols and all those sort of things. This can spot AI coming a mile over things like that. So we can go onto this side here and go, right, okay, from the instructions, I'm just going to paste in the extra things I want. And you'll notice that on the tone and style, it put a little demarcation to go, this is the section that relates to that. Those hashes just mean it's like a title. And where you go down an extra set of hashing, it's just basically saying these relate to the previous section. So then, in other words, it's telling you it's a subtitle and it relates to the previous topic. So when you go back up, that's how you read it. Otherwise, it just looks like one long stream of there. So once we put those in, and we go, okay, that's fine. I'm going to create that. It's effectively created me an agent. I haven't pushed it out to a specific location. I could use it in Copilot Chat. I could use it and call it from Teams. Or I can then go here and say, well, actually, I want to deploy that. And I can take it from the settings and I can push that out to a particular location. From here, what I can also do is I can then take this and I could go, well, I need to do lots more with this because we prototyped it, we've proven it works, but now I need to expand what it does to talk to our CRM or talk to our ticketing system. For that, I can then take that and I can move it into what they call Copilot Studio. Let's just go to the agents. And from here, I can pick ones that have been published. I've not refreshed it, so it's picking up older ones I've already got. And it will basically pull them in. And then we can go through a more detailed editing process where I can start to say what model it should use. I've got the same things as before in terms of the links and the referencing and what services we can in the background. But I can start to say, where should this be made available? I can put this out to a team. I can put it out to chat. I can put it into SharePoint. I can start to put it onto our website and those other sort of areas. So this is really where we're transitioning to an app, not to a declarative agent that the users are going to use. I'm going to stop here because Christian's been hovering for about 3 minutes. Any kind of questions at this point? Because I'm not going any further today. That's essentially where I wanted to get to. Yes, question.
Just sorry, if anyone needs to go for a meeting, feel free to do as well.
And that's very helpful. And if you're going to go back through this and figure it all out, a couple of questions around this, what you create. So
yes.
the thing created that's reusable
yes.
and available. Where does it in terms of the data of the thing, where's it live?
So it creates a file called a .agent,
Yep.
and it puts it in the library where you were sat when you went to create that, or in the root of the site that you were sat in.
So it's sitting within your SharePoint.
It's sitting within your SharePoint area. So if I'm on my resources site and I'm on my homepage and I create one, it puts it into the documents, and then when I publish it, it moves it to the site assets. So it puts it in a folder under there,
So it's
and it creates
file,
a .agent.
file that sits within your SharePoint and
Yes.
got complete control.
Correct. All your permissions, all your access, metadata, if you've been sensible enough to inject it, all of that is available in there. I'll do a little diagram and put that on the notes when I send out the slides, so you've got a location as to how you get to it. And anything else in the room? Thanks for staying away.
Just a question from online.
Yep.
What about creating a summary of emails from a shared inbox to be used in an on-call handover document?
So there's two things there. If you're in the shared inbox and you have Copilot enabled as a tool for everybody in Office, then you could just run that as a repeated prompt. You could just create that description, tell it where it's going to put it to, and the format that it looks like, and just run it as a prompt. You could use an agent to do that if you were doing something a bit more expansive, and you'd give the agent the descriptions, the do's and don'ts, the output format, etc. But if I'm just on a core group or a hunt group that's going to be dealing with incoming things, and we've got a shared inbox and we just want to hand over between shifts, I'd probably use a repeated Copilot prompt rather than an agent. And really, the agent, as you saw, is just running a really massive prompt behind the scenes for you.
So we've got another one. Can agents speak to other agents?
So that question online, so can agents speak to others? Yes, you can. I mentioned something called skills and design at the beginning. And when I talked about how agents can be overloaded, if you put too much information into what the agent should do, it gets too big, it starts to fray at the edges in how it operates. You break out things that you wanted to do, such as take this, I want to create a new policy around adoption of AI. You give it all the examples, but the formatting and the output, you'd use what they call a design. And it's essentially like a mini agent that sits, a definition is in a different folder that always goes, always use our font, always use this format, always use this document template, always put it out in this structure. So it just goes and calls that when it needs to output things. So yes, agents, you can use them to chain and do those actions, those skills are the way to do that. But you can also then chain a bigger agent together to do bigger processing. I'm not covering that today because that's when you're drifting into the app development space of things, when you're talking to what they call a workforce or an army of agents, like that image I had right at the beginning that's got the guy cracking the whip over the robots. That's how one passes it on to another. That's way beyond this level of conversation. But yes, they can. Anything else?
One from Christopher McDowell, who's online also. It said, can you do skills in the agent builder?
So yes, you can. Skills can get put in as a definition with hash skills. You can ask the agent builder to generate you a skills file, and it would go, what is the skill supposed to do? A skill is a task. It's a self-encapsulated task. So we can go, I've had this long conversation with the agent, trying to refine what I'm asking it about, the generation of new policy, the guidelines that I should approach, what kind of wording should I use, what's the best practice online, what have other people done. I get to a sensible output, and now I want to generate a document or a template or publish something. I can use skills to do that, and I can use Agent Builder to say, create me a publishing skill that will go through your process to send it to the right group, look for the right kind of responses, and at the end of it. And so when you've had your conversation, you go, great, publish, not a button. That's a skill it's called, and it's going to push it through the workflow. So yes, you can. Takes a bit more thought, because getting your head around using the phrase a skill to mean an encapsulated just activity or a task is a bit of a, oh, okay. But essentially anything that can be just broken out as a chunk and redone is a skill. And skill files look like the Copilot one when you open it. So they're just, you know, that definition I put in the description, It's all flat text, so you can go through and look at it and you can just read it, and the skill is the same. The only difference is they've got the phrase .md in terms of the definition of the file that they are. So instead of a .copilot or .agent, it's called .md, and it just means it's a description. Anything else?
That's it.
Thank you for hanging around longer than expected. Go ahead.
Just one more. Thinking about how you might actually use something like this in your job. I work on internal policies at Health New Zealand, and there are lots of them. They're all saved as PDFs in a SharePoint site, with management data and stuff added on. Got an idea that we should have a chatbot that any staff member can interact with. So a nurse can go and ask what they're allowed to do on their work phone or something. What could possibly go wrong? Are there any... Can I just go in with a SharePoint agent or an agent builder agent and what should I be aware of if I'm doing that?
So the one of the key things is the kind of information that's collated there. If it's kind of operational guidelines, the kind of stuff we used to think of as the office manual and stuff many years ago. If it's that kind of activity, then just putting an agent, which is essentially the chat bit, is just natural language into a bot anyway. So it just sits over the top. You can go look at those and act in this capacity, give it a definition. And as long as you're telling it how to operate within those, the negatives of don't go outside, don't invent, you'll get a reasonably consistent response. If your topics and your range of information is much broader, so maybe you've got health guidance in there, maybe you've got employee management pieces in there as well, you might want to consider breaking those out either by agent reference or by other scope. Don't overload the scope of what the agent can do, because then you will start getting it wandering off. If you give it 5 different things it's supposed to be an expert in that are not related to a single process, then you will get it going, well, maybe when you mentioned that one word that's also in the health guidance, which is also inside internal policy, which is also has a fundamentally different reason over here, you were meaning that one, and I'm going to reference that document, which has got nothing to do with the health guidance. So think about the scope of your agent. What is it supposed to be? And a generic bot is just like search on steroids with some context. An agent gives it, you can give the agent context. So just trying to think of it like that. If you've got a junior, what do you want the junior to do? Well, eventually you want them to do everything, but you start them off on one job. Yeah.
Yeah, if we're talking about the maturity of adopting this agentic copilot in the New Zealand public sector, how it can range rated from 0 to 10. Where are we right now?
For the whole sector, I wouldn't even want to guess. It's going to be low. Everybody's interested. Everybody's piloting. Lots of people are saying we're doing this, when what they mean is they're testing it. What we have in terms of experience in the sector is we have some good pockets of knowledge and experience building, but what we don't have is a consistent level across all of the organizations as to what's good and what's bad. So in the health area, there are a few organizations who are really on it because they've been doing AI and agents in health for a long time, particularly when you're talking diagnosticians and pharmaceutical-based information, and even down to medical prosthetics and things like that. All of that sort of stuff AI has been in that industry a long time, so they're doing quite well. Their back office people are doing the same as the rest of us. What do I use this for? What can I get better with? So it's pockets. We're all on the same journey. It's a lot faster journey than anything else we've done.